Thrasher and Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Down from the skies above, the end of life has come. The sirens roar as mass confusion spreads like fire. Mankind is brought to heel. The truth is now revealed. Our leaders sharing secrets to break the seventh seal. Tales you never told. The secrets that you hold deep inside. How long have you known? How long have you kept us blind?
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio, and I'm very excited about our next guest because, as everybody knows, I like all kinds of metal, but thrash metal is my favorite, and they have some killer thrash metal and other influences in it, which is what I really dig. So let's welcome to the show Eric from Crüzer. How are you?
Hello. This is Eric Wilmot, lead singer from Crüzer.
Nice. And tell me about your background there, because I'm kind of digging it. Behind you, it looks very cool.
It's just my bedroom. I've got my battery blanket, of course, because you can't.
That's killer.
Can't go to sleep at night without the warm embrace of Corthon. You know, Bathory is my favorite band, and I like to show it off whenever possible. I've also got a nice big record collection behind me, and of course, I've got another Bathory poster on the wall because I just can't get enough of that band.
I definitely have. I have behind me somewhere over there my album collection, and there is Bathory from back in the 80s from me getting it at Oz Records in the Valley in Los Angeles, you know, and going, oh, what is this?
Oh, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your band. For the listeners that have never heard your music, tell us a little bit about how you describe it, but not genre, because I don't really give a shit about genre. I hate the old school gatekeeping shit that I had to deal with in the 80s, and I'm glad we're not really like that anymore, except for some of the idiots. But for the most part,
of our messaging as well.
And that one song too, that that's what really drew me to that, because listen, it was, I remember, Motley Crue, that was the first club show I ever went to at the Roxy on the Sunset Strip before they even had an album. And then I was at like Slayer's first show ever, Metallica's first show ever. But once we started getting into Slayer, you weren't allowed to like Motley Crue. And we had to burn all the Motley Crue shit. And that was just one stupid thing that we all had to deal with back then. So, tell us a little bit about your thoughts.
Well, I know you don't like to use genre labels or anything like that, like you said. So I will say that Crüzer is ostensibly a thrash metal band, but, you know, there's a lot of play in that genre. You know, you have bands that toy around with speed metal or, you know, the crossover thrash kind of stuff that veers into like death thrash, like Demolition Hammer and Exhorder. And, you know, I love all that stuff. And I love hair metal too, you know. I love
there you
go.
I
was just watching some hair metal videos on TV as I was working out this morning. So we love to like play around with the genre. We love to kind of bend the rules and break them a little bit and kind of, you know, smash the stereotypes or cliches or whatever have you with our music. Because, you know, on the EP that we just made, it's like a buffet of different, it's all technically thrash, but it's all so different. There's some like metalcore sounding stuff in there. There's some crossover, I want to say like crossover hardcore punk kind of stuff on Born to Rise. You have I Need Thrash, which is probably the most Slayer-esque song.
Yes.
Which is also ironically the song that sort of like bashes against the stereotypes the most, with the line about not going out and killing posers, because that's stupid. You know, I got called a poser when I was younger by other metalheads, and it sucks. You know, it's not fun for anyone.
It's
and then
stupid.
Of course you have, exactly. And then you have the last song, Pit Viper, on the album, which is by far the most like radio friendly, hair metal tinged, new wave of British heavy metal tinged song on the whole album. So, you know, you get it all in one package, which is what we wanted to try to accomplish.
I think that's really cool. And a couple points. So if you take all the old school thrash metal bands, none of them sounded alike. Like it's not even though it was a genre, it was almost not a genre because
Yeah.
Anthrax and Slayer, as example, are completely different sounds.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
You
the
know?
production too. One of the reasons I love 80s metal so much is because the production always sounds different. It's all technically bad from a production standpoint compared to modern metal
Right?
production, but it sounds bad in a very unique kind of way. Like no two metal albums from the era sound the same.
Oh,
Like,
for sure.
you know, you take like a Dark Angel record and God, I don't know, like a Cinderella record or a Morbid Angel record or you know, anything like that. They all sound completely different. Really strange production techniques. I don't know what they were snorting in the studio. I mean, I can imagine. But yeah, I
Yeah,
love it.
believe me, anything you could imagine, they were doing.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned Dark Angel too, because that's one of my favorite bands. And
Oh yeah, I love Dark Angel.
I was just with Gene Hoglan at Hellfest interviewing him for Death Clock, but then a couple weeks before for the new Dark Angel album, because there's a new one coming out now.
Mhm.
So
Oh yeah,
that's-
I'm very excited for that.
So how did your interest in music and in metal start? What's the origin story?
Well, my mom is a 1970s kind of rock and roll hippie chick, so I was raised on the classics, you know, your AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, Van Halen. The local rock radio station, Rock 101, was a staple in the car growing up. But it was kind of just passive listening for the most part. It was just kind of in one ear and out the other, and I didn't really pay attention to the music until around middle school when I watched a little known film called Maximum Overdrive, directed by the master of horror himself, Stephen King, and featuring a soundtrack by AC/DC. And as soon as I heard that opening riff to Who Made Who, I was completely hooked. And you know, I actually started paying attention to the music I was listening to and being like, wow, this is actually really good stuff. Like, oh, so this is what Black Sabbath sounds like. So this is what Metallica sounds like, you know? And when I got older and became a teenager, I guess my way of rebelling against my mother was to just go heavier. So I started getting into like Slayer and you know, Dark Angel, Bathory. As soon as I heard Bathory, my mind was just blown. Especially when I found out that he basically recorded all those albums in what was essentially a garage.
Right.
And that's what kind of inspired me to start recording on my own, because I'm like, you know, if this guy can do it in a garage on outdated, you know, 1960s whatever recording equipment, I can do it on a computer in a bedroom.
Right.
And that's when I started. Yeah, that's when I started recording my own stuff in high school. Started jamming in bands, and the rest is kind of history.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you're also a voice actor too. That's pretty
Yes. Cool. Yeah. I just recently started kind of seriously diving into that about a year or two ago. I was just in a YouTube animated show called Mammal Squad. I managed to snag a role on there. I was also in a mobile game a year or two back called Journey Renewed Fate Fantasy, which is like a kind of a Chinese like RPG mobile game. I did the voice of Monkey King, Sun Wukong. And I also collaborate a lot with a YouTube channel called Spotted Martin. They do comic book dubs, like official author approved comic book dubs. I worked with them on Tamberlane and Supercell, and it's a really great group of people.
That's pretty cool. See now,
Oh yeah,
I bet you that also like they play hand in hand.
Oh, yeah.
And the voice acting kind of probably create some thought processes for the songwriting.
yeah, oh yeah, especially since I started going into voice acting professionally. It's definitely kind of upped my recording game in terms of like going into a studio recording music, because now I live and breathe in the recording studio, whether it's my home studio setup that I have over here off camera, or you know, an actual studio when I go to record with a band. I love standing in front of a microphone and making weird noises. It's the most fun thing you can do, really.
I think it's also really fun on instruments, because like when I was a teenager and I was starting to play guitar, my dad was like, you should give that up because you suck. And all I was really doing was trying to see what noises I could make out of it. Like, you know, how you're just sitting there experimenting and they're like, oh, well, that was cool. Or, you know, it sucked. But, you know, you got to experiment if you're going to be creative, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was because I was left-handed. You know, I started taking up guitar, and I remember my mom's ex at the time being like, you know, it's a right-handed world, and if you're not going to learn guitar right-handed, you should just give up right now. And I'm like, no, So I paid a little extra money, or asked my mom to pay the little extra money at the time because I was a kid. And, we got a left-handed guitar, and I actually got pretty damn good at guitar. I don't really play so much anymore. I just use guitar for songwriting. And I was more of a rhythm player anyway. I was never a big shredder or anything like that. But yeah, don't believe people when they say to give up.
Yeah, I kind of went through the same thing because I'm a lefty too. And it's like, it was just easier to learn righty. Like even the guitar teachers, like here, it's easier for me to teach you righty because it's so hard for the right-handed people to kind of twist around their brain like a lefty.
Well, no, I completely disagree because in terms of like lessons, at least, because when I was taking guitar lessons, I was left-handed. My guitar teacher was right-handed. So it would be like just watching a mirror image of myself. I found it very helpful because I could just.
That's a good concept.
Exactly.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, I found it very helpful. Yeah.
Well, see, there's the advantage right there. So tell us how people reach out to you on your socials, on the web, how they can get the new album, how they can get merch, check everything out, tour dates, all that.
All right. So we are on Twitter, Blue Sky, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Bandcamp, and we even got a Telegram. Just look up Crüzer Music on all of those platforms. That's CRUZERMUZIK. You can tell we're Canadian because we say
right.
But look up that username on all of those platforms and you'll find us. We got some brand new merch that we're going to put on our Bandcamp very, very soon. I was kind of starting that right as soon as the interview was starting. So I'll probably see if I can finish that up as soon as this interview is done. We got brand new Pit Viper t-shirts. We're also playing another show at the end of July in Vancouver. If you're in Vancouver, come see us with Terrifier at the Kingsway, I believe, on July 26th. It's going to be a great show.
So how far is Vancouver from Calgary?
Oh, as far as a drive goes, I would say... I mean, I've done the drive before, so I should know this by now. I'm going to
because one of my co-hosts, okay, she lives in Calgary. So, in fact, we were just having that discussion last week about Z and Z.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm going to tell her to make sure she goes and everybody she knows goes, but I don't know how far it is.
All right, it's about an 11-hour drive from Calgary to Vancouver.
That's a long drive. So
it is a long drive, but I've done it, and I got to tell you, it's a pretty nice scenic drive with lots of stops along the way. So
okay, I'm going to tell her she has to go, or she can't be a co-host on my show anymore.
Hey, I mean, we'll probably get out to Calgary eventually. Our plan is we got to cast a nice wide net around Canada anyway, right? We got to play Calgary. We want to play, a little bit more rural BC, go out because, you want to like cast your net wide and then say at the end of the show that you'll be back. And then actually a year or two later, you actually go back. That's how you keep a fan base around. Right. So don't worry. We'll go to Calgary soon enough.
There it is.
Only a matter of time.
Any final words?
Also, yes, come out to Vancouver and see us.
There you go. For sure.
Check out the album. It's great. It's called Look to the Skies. You can find it on all the streaming platforms, Bandcamp, Spotify, all that good stuff. Physical copies coming very soon. And rock on, Earthlings.
Rock on. Thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipe Man.
No worries. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipe Man on W4CY Radio.